We have huge updates in Richard Allen's appeal. What is the strategy his attorneys will use? How successful will this be? And is this just the tip of the iceberg? All that being said, everything's alleged. Welcome to The Point. Let's get to it.
Tonight, we're getting new insight into how Richard Allen's legal team plans to appeal his conviction for the Delphi double. A jury found Allen guilty last December for Abby Williams and Libby German.
He is appealing that verdict and his 120-year sentence. Fox 9's Max Lewis explains the key ruling from the judge that his attorneys are going after.
In a motion filed this week, Richard Allen's appellate attorneys for the first time revealed the elements of the highly watched case they plan to use in an attempt to reverse his conviction, telling the court they, quote, intend to raise the denial of the motion to suppress and the exclusion of third-party evidence on appeal. The motion to suppress deals with the warrant used to search Allen's home, where detectives say they found what they dubbed the Bridge Guy starter kit, including a blue Carhartt jacket, numerous knives, and the police say they connected to an unspent bullet found at the crime scene.
It's certainly worth taking up because this is certainly an outlier case on the facts.
Allen's defense attorneys argued that the chief investigator on the case, Tony Liggett, omitted facts and fabricated witness statements to obtain that warrant.
It's more than that. It's more than just a fabrication. Look at the timing of everything. First of all, what is a Bridge Guy starter kit? Are you telling me that if somebody happens to pass in the area that I live in and they happen to have a brown Carhartt jacket, now all of a sudden I'm a suspect? All of a sudden I'm the guy who did it simply because I happen to be in the area and I happen to have that type of coat. Everybody in that area has that type of coat. I mean, this is ridiculous and absurd. They completely left out the fact that one of the eyewitnesses says she saw a young man with curly hair. You trying to tell me all of a sudden that's Richard Allen? That in the span of a few years, he aged 50 and his thick curly hair all of a sudden fell out. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolute nonsense. It's beyond trash. They didn't just withhold information, they completely excluded it. They didn't let anybody know. I have a hard time believing that a judge, an actual judge, with a law degree, not some of these other people who just happen to be elected in magistrate positions, but a judge with an actual law degree would sit there and look at all this evidence. They would look at all these eyewitness statements and they would say, yeah, obviously this guy probably could have done it. I don't believe that. I'm not buying it. And I don't think that's a narrative that should be sold. I mean, okay, he had a .40 caliber firearm. So does everybody else in that community. Or at least the vast majority of the people in that community. That round did not exclusively match Richard Allen's weapon. I don't know why people keep pushing that narrative. I get it that the mainstream media lies and the mainstream media twists and the mainstream media panders to a large audience who wants to believe everything is sunshine and rainbows, but that's not the case. It is a complete fabrication of the truth to get on there and say this round matched Richard Allen's weapon exclusively, meaning it could only be his. That is 100% not true. That is 100% in the court record. And if you don't believe me, fact check me. r/Delphi documents. You can get the full transcript. Download that transcript. Do a search for this term. Search for the word .40 caliber. You'll come across it. You will see on cross-examination, the state's ballistic expert says she could not exclude other weapons tested, meaning that weapon could belong to somebody else. We just don't know. It just so happens Richard Allen happens to be the only guy dumb enough to say he happened to be at the park that day. But once again, when you're trying to help people, when your goal and intent is to try and help and solve a crime, why would you believe you're a suspect? I mean, let's talk about they found knives in the home. Everybody has knives in the home. The takeaway here is they didn't even say anything about a box cutter on the state side until Richard Allen just had his episode while he was in solitary confinement in a prison before he was actually charged with a crime. Let that resonate for a minute. Oh, and let's not forget his right to a speedy trial was violated.
However, Judge Fran Gull ruled there was no evidence of that and declined to throw out the evidence found in Allen's home. Defense attorney John Tompkins thinks the strongest argument could be on the second issue, which is Judge Gull's ruling that Allen's defense team couldn't present evidence that pointed to other possible suspects.
Remember, they thought it was two people, and they released sketches of two people, and they asked the entire nation to identify those two people, neither of whom was the eventual defendant.
Delphi investigators had several suspects over the years, including Ron Logan, who owned the property where the girls' bodies were found. Logan was such a suspect that police searched his home in the weeks after the but he was never charged. Investigators had long believed that more than one person committed the murder, but never explained why their theory changed.
Their theory changed because they stumbled across an interview where a guy said he happened to be there. That's what changed. That's how I feel about it. I'm sorry if you disagree. This is an open discussion channel. And on this channel, you can feel free to disagree at any point in time and not be blocked, not be attacked, or not be cussed out. The timing and how this thing lined out, how all this stuff lined out, seems to me like they ran out of witnesses, they ran out of suspects, they had no idea who committed this crime. They stumbled across Richard Allen's name. Well, he said he was at the park that day, and since we've already screwed up this investigation, let's put it all on him. Let's fabricate all this evidence to fit Richard Allen. I mean, let's look at it like this. After the state got its conviction, after the state got up there and did their press conference, knowing that they had found the guy who committed this crime, Nick Mcleland, in a statement, said he wasn't ruling out other suspects. But the whole premise of their case against Richard Allen was he was the sole perpetrator. So what is that telling you? What does that tell anybody with a shred of common sense? It should tell you that the state has no idea what happened, and that their entire case against Richard Allen was nonsense, and that they still believe there are other individuals involved. And if there are other individuals involved, then everything they said in the trial against Richard Allen was crap. It was, as far as I'm concerned, hearsay. And understand when Judge Gull made a ruling that there was no nexus. I got a lot of comments on a lot of my videos that there was no nexus. Well, Baldwin had very recently gotten on a podcast with Defense Diaries, and he laid out a very interesting point. How can he really establish a nexus if he isn't allowed the proper time to get in front of the judge and present all the evidence in a clear and concise manner? Call up all these witnesses, all these police witnesses, and say, did you say this on this day? What did you say in this interview? They didn't have a chance to do any of that. This was like a one-day hearing or some kind of nonsense. And even if you believe Richard Allen is guilty, okay, whatever, you believe Richard Allen is guilty, are you legitimately telling me that at this moment in time, he got a fair trial? Are you saying this man got a fair shot? Judge Gull was the judge who said cameras need to be in the courtroom. These trials need to be transparent. The public needs to know. They need to have all the information. But all of a sudden, when this one lands on her desk, she shuts it all down. I had personally believed for the longest time Ron Logan was the primary suspect. That was just my guess based off everything that was floating around. It seemed to make the most sense to me at the time, and it still makes the most sense to me now. But nothing about this trial passed the smell test. His constitutional rights were violated. He had a right to a speedy trial. He wanted a speedy trial, and he didn't get that speedy trial because of court antics, because of nonsense, because of judicial blunders. If Judge Gull would have taken the time to do a 1 to 2 week hearing on this whole Franks memorandum, maybe a lot of this could have came in, but she didn't want that. You got a day or you got 2 days to get through all these motions. That's absurd. They are trampling on this man's rights. And I'll tell you right now, even if during the trial they laid out some key piece of evidence that I said this points to guilt, I would still be on here saying that man deserves a fair shot. And if you think he got a fair trial, you believe he got a fair trial, please let me know down in the comments below.
Because the jury needs to understand this was not a single perpetrator theory, and this guy was not the first guy that you wanted to arrest.
But Tompkins says less than 5% of all convictions are reversed on direct appeal. Allen's attorneys have not yet filed that formal appeal, saying they have not yet received all the necessary evidence. In the newsroom, I'm Max Lewis, Fox 59 News.
The one bright side in this whole situation is the state's attorneys have agreed with Richard Allen's appellate attorneys in that they need the exhibits in this Frank memorandum. And at least initially it seems like they're playing fair, they're playing by the rules, and everybody's just trying to go along to get through this process. I have not heard any reports or stories that one side's doing antics and the other one's having a hard time. So that's a good thing. At least it's different than dealing with Nick Mcleland. But there is 100% a nexus in this story. One of the people named in the Franks memorandum had a son, and that son dated one of the victims. That is a nexus. The crime scene was staged according to actual experts, not the state's experts, actual experts, to resemble some sort of ritualistic scene. You have bizarre Facebook posts. You have sworn statements from individuals saying they did something to one of those individuals. And I haven't even touched on Keegan Klein. What more of a nexus do you need in this story? If that is not a connection, what is a connection? Don't tell me they're around at the scene, because that's nonsense. Don't tell me Richard Allen went to the bridge that day, so that's a connection. Nonsense. He wasn't at the bridge during the time of this attack. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. It's just basic math at this point. If the state's claim is these witnesses saw a bridge guy, Richard Allen is bridge guy. So therefore, Richard Allen is the guy who committed this crime. Then why did none of those people say that guy looks like bridge guy? He either is or isn't bridge guy according to the actual people who were at the park that day. And according to all those people, all those witnesses, none of them saw Richard Allen. So how is this a conviction? The timeline doesn't match up. The evidence doesn't match up. The fact that his rights were violated is an issue. There is probably years worth of appellate issues within this case alone. But they are right. These appeals are long shots, less than 5%. I have heard some people who are lawyers get on here and say that Richard Allen may have a 10% chance. And even at 10%, that is still a long shot. This is still not a guarantee. All I can do is hope and pray that at least somebody within the state of Indiana has some common sense. All I can do is hope and pray that somebody in the state of Indiana understands what constitutional rights are. If Richard Allen did it, he did it. Okay, let's lay out all the evidence. Let's lay out all the facts. Let's let both sides present a valid case in front of a jury and have them make the decision. You cannot tell me one person in that short time frame moved both of those girls and didn't leave any drag marks, while at the same time having the time to hand cut limbs off trees. That is absolutely absurd. Not to mention the fact that they searched that area multiple times all through the night with lights and they found nothing. I mean, so much of this doesn't line up, but the appeal's moving through. It's been a minute since my last update, but I'm 100% following this story. I'm 100% following all the posts, and I'm 100% following all the videos. Like I say, r/Delphi docs for any and all information following this case. But if you enjoy this and a more fair, open conversation, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.